So today we have to start a new topic. This is a very, very important topic and maybe the one of the most fundamental concept in physics. So today we are going to learn about something called energy. So this is the name of the chapter, but it is like rank 1, rank 2. So the work energy power, the energy is the most fundamental thing. And when you have energy, then you can do some work. So without energy, work is not possible. If someone is doing work, energy is there. That is why he is or she is or the agent is doing the work. And at what rate you perform the work, like at what rate you expense the energy stored, that defines the power. That's why this is the third time. The work energy power is a chapter in which we learn about the energy, work, and this power thing. So what is the motivation of learning this chapter? Like why we need to learn this chapter? Everything is going well so far and we have been doing or solving all problems. Because we are doing all questions and what we are using is the Newton's uh, second law mostly to solve the question. So actually Newton law is sufficient in a sense to solve variety of problems. But the problem is in Newton's law, we can solve, we can write a F equals to ma. And once we have the acceleration, we can use the kinematics to solve, or maybe calculus to solve. But the problem is Newton's law is only applicable when the path is well defined. Applicable means it is always applicable, but you can solve numerical or you can integrate or you can find the acceleration all the time if the path of the particle is well known to us in advance. So if it is not the case, we cannot solve. So now Newton's law of motion is of course a way to solve question of finding the velocity and acceleration and so on. But in a situation when the path becomes random, let's say if you have remember that a block is kept on a inclined plane, maybe you're attached to a pulley. So we have been solving questions like this in which the path was well defined. So now the block is moving this way, it's going this way, and so on. But we never solve a question in which the path was like this. Give you the initial angle, then I cannot give you all angle because that's impossible. So the angle is randomly changing. I mean, there's no fixed pattern of angle. And then you release a ball, block. So if this block will move and come down, let's say, then the laws of motion is totally like not capable of finding the answer. The reason is this kind of integration is almost next to impossible. So this acceleration is variable and there is no fixed way of variation. Like We cannot assign a variable for accessing in which it is varied. So now we have come across a situation where the laws of motion will not work. Then how we can find the, let's say, velocity or the speed of this particle, this block? So it turns out to be that the fact that whatever be the path, there are some property which is kind of constant. So there are some property which never changes whether you go from top to bottom. And that property was one of the most fundamental property in physics. And that fundamental property is called the conservation of energy. So we define the energy conservation, and after applying that conservation principle, we obtain that what should be the velocity of the block at the bottommost path. Although the laws of motion is applicable, there is no problem with the application part, but mathematically it is impossible to arrive at the answer. Whereas energy as a principle can give the answer very easily because the principle has nothing to do with the path. So if path is known to you, you can always go back to laws of motion. That's the best way to do it. Path is not known to you, then the only way to go is energy method. But it does not mean that the energy method cannot be applied when path is known. So energy is much more universal than laws of motion. So it can be applied when laws of motion is valid and applicable and can be applied. So wherever the laws of motion is applied, energy is applied. Vice versa is not always. So the question which you can solve with laws of motion, you can always solve with the energy. But the question which you can solve with energy, you may or may not solve with the laws of motion. So do not think that laws of motion is now gone chapter. No, it is equally valid. And I will show you a variety of problems that we have solved in the laws of motion chapter. And that question we can solve using the energy method. So energy method is a technique now, and the purpose of learning this chapter is that the laws of motion cannot be used to solve all variety of problems, because sometimes the path is a very random path which equation is not known to us in advance, and without the equation it's impossible to apply the law. I mean, laws of motion. So for laws of motion to be applicable, the A must be well defined. And the problem that when you are not able to define A, then you cannot solve the question. So now this is the motivation, like why we need to learn this chapter. I mean, we could have done without this chapter, but no. We need to learn. There is no way out. So in this chapter, actually, the energy is the most fundamental. But we'll start with the work. So we'll try to understand what is work. So basically, work is a fancy name for the energy exchange. So in essence, at conceptual level, work only refers to the exchange process. So when someone does work as per the physics definition, not as per the human psychology in which you do work. Let's say I'm teaching it, that's I'm doing work. So that's work is not as per the physics. The work here we define by the capital gain in a sense, like what you earn is called work here. So in physics, the work is not a capital gain or in a way the energy received. So in physics, the work is of course energy gain, but in certain, a way which is different from the regular idea. Okay. So the work is basically a name given to the process of energy exchange. Why should I mention? So if someone will ask you what is the work, what we can say? So we say that it is a process by which energy can be. Do you know the guy Shubham? So the definition of work is very interesting. So you can take an example, a simple example. Let's say your friend is running, okay, and you are running after your friend. So your friend is running, you're chasing actually your friend. And when you come very close to your friend, you give him a kick. So after the kick, your friend will move faster than before or slower. What will happen?
Faster than before.
So now you might have heard about something called kinetic energy, half mv square. So
Yes,
after the kick, your friend kinetic energy will increase or decrease.
increase.
So now the obvious question is the extra energy which your friend has suddenly gained, from where that energy has come to him.
So because we applied a force on
So of course the only possible reason we can state is that the kick. And a kick is basically a way of applying a force. And not only the force, when you kick, when you
it
kick your
displaced.
yeah. So the force which you applied also had some, duration displacement in the direction of application. So this is the way of giving energy to your friend, and which definitely incorporates force. So if you realize that you eventually gave energy to your friend, the kick was a method. So you can say the energy is given to your friend with a new method called kick. And kick is essentially the force applied. So the overall idea is this, that energy is something that we can change with other bodies in a variety of ways. And one of the ways the force method. Like you apply the force, you displace the point of application, and in turn you eventually end up either giving energy or receiving energy. So now energy flow can take place in two ways. Either energy can come to the body or it can go away from the body also. So for example, let's say your friend is running and you extend your hand and hold his collar. So while chasing, if you hold his collar and if you slow down, then the chance is that he will also slow down. So now the obvious question is when he will slow down or when his speed will decrease. So the other way of saying is his kinetic energy will also decrease, right? So now the question is who has taken his energy? So who has taken his energy? So the answer is again, it is a force. And if you realize that this force was retarding, this force was acting opposite to velocity of your friend, it was opposing the motion. So when a force opposes the motion, then it will extract the energy, it will take away the energy from the body on which it is acting. So now we can understand one thing, that energy can be given to a body or can be taken from body. There are two directions of flow, energy flow. So when the energy flows on the body, or when the energy flows to the body on which you apply the force, we say a positive work has been done. And when you extract energy from a body on which you're applying the force, so we say that the work has been done is negative. So work as a definition is very simple. It is simply a method of energy exchange. So it's the name of a method. So it's a fancy name given to this process actually. So let's call it work. You could have said something like samosa, maybe some rasgulla. I mean, it doesn't matter really. Like it's just like a name. So work is essentially a name. The meaning is like a process. Now, just like if I want to give you money, I can give in variety ways. I can give you Google Pay. That's like one of the digital mode of paying money. So UPI. So you call it. You can do Paytm. So or you can do NEFT, the online transfer. You can do maybe a check. Earlier there was a draft also. Like no matter how or which process you use, you end up giving money. That's the core idea. So the energy exchange in nature essentially take place in two ways, which we are doing on a regular basis. So the one of the method of energy exchange is called work. This is very crucial to understand. The other famous method or most often used method is called heat. So now you will realize later on that heat and work are two different methods by which energy exchange take place in nature very commonly, very often. And the second method of energy transfer, having a separate chapter to deal with in physics called thermodynamics. So basically, thermodynamics is nothing but again a chapter of work energy power. The only difference is there we give energy in both methods, work also and heat also. And very soon, because you are going to study about the thermodynamics in chemistry, so let me tell you in that context also what is thermodynamics. It's again the thermodynamics itself is the energy exchange process. But in thermodynamics, energy exchange take place in two possible ways. One is the work, another is the heat energy. Or basically, it's called heat only. Heat itself is the energy flow process. And the difference between the two methods is crucial. So one method demands that you must displace the piston and cylinder. So we have a piston and cylinder, just like the engine, what you call engine. So engines are basically a design of cylinder attached with the piston. Pistons are a movable object. Cylinders are fixed object. So the motion of the piston is basically work because the gas exert pressure on the piston and then it displaces. So force into displacement is work. But at the same time, we also give energy through the temperature difference. Like one is hot body, other is cold body, and we know that energy can flow from hot body to cold body. So the flow of energy from hotter body to relatively colder body does not require any displacement. So the moment you will touch a hot iron rod, you can feel the energy flow. And I need not to move iron rod itself. Just touch it and you can feel it. Don't do it anyway. So the heat energy can transfer without any force thing. Like you need not to move something. Work is also energy transfer, but it demands some movement. So the movement is the crucial thing. Of course, you need to have some movement to allow the displacement, and then work can be defined. So work and heat are basically energy modes. I mean, you can say method by which energy can be distributed. So work and heat. Now, these are two modes of energy transfer. And the various formula that you will come across in the chapter of thermodynamics, calorimetry, and so on, all are just doing only one thing. They account for the energy exchange part. So you whatever you will learn there is basically this chapter. So if you can look through this, the lens of this chapter, the thermodynamics will become very easy. But the moment you look as a thermodynamics, it will become very difficult. So the core idea is try to develop the energy way of looking at things, so like energy and heat separately. So you need to know that when energy is happening, exchange is happening by virtue of work, and when energy exchange is happening by virtue of heat or temperature difference. So what is heat energy? So you can say that it is the energy which can flow whenever there is a difference of temperature. So temperature difference is the cause behind this exchange called heat. And the force and displacement is the cause behind the exchange of other energy. And because these are two different methods, we name differently. So we call heat at one place and we call work at another place. But similarly, we have other form of energy exchange. So like solar energy, you know what is solar energy? The photon carries energy, and that energy eventually gets transferred to the electron of the silicon panel, like called the solar panel. So basically, solar panel is nothing but a, a medium filled with electrons or free electrons. And by receiving the photon, those free electron hole pair creates a potential difference. And by virtue of the difference, you create eventually a big difference of potential, and that carries the current. So in a way, every electron which we free using the solar panel, these electrons are freed by the help of photons. And these free electrons is collected and we create the potential difference. So actually solar panels are attached to a cell, a battery, the electrolytic cell. And this electrolytic cell will accumulate these charges. So when you have enough charge, you can put into use, and that's how it works. So we do not derive the energy directly from solar panel to and we ignite the bulb. No, it's not like that. Every solar panel will have the attached battery. The solar panel will create or generate the electrons, whole pair. And now it will generate means it will be breaking of some bonds in the solar panel. It will create the free electrons, and these electrons will accumulate to the battery and will create a potential difference. When it will get discharged, which means all of the electron hole pair will recombine and battery will get discharged after some time. Then again the light will come and will create the process. So this process keeps on happening as long as the light is reaching, photons are reaching. So a direct sunlight is not required. Even indirect light can do the same job. It's only about photons. So again, that is also a way of energy exchange by receiving the energy. So there are a variety of ways in which energy can be exchanged. So we have energy due to the electric field. We have energy due to the other field. So a variety of ways is possible or are possible actually in which energy can be exchanged. And now in this chapter we will be only focusing on one part of it, one method of energy exchange in nature, and we are calling it work. Once you understand the two nature, the work and the heat, then you can actually play with thermodynamics. So most of the question of thermodynamics we can solve by the energy conservation principle or work energy theorem as we say. But it's difficult to actually realize that things are actually designed in that way. So coming back to work, I mean, this is something which we never realize. So when you start, let's say you are standing on like all the athletes are standing on a track, and the gun fires and they start running. Let's say the Usain Bolt is leading the race. So if you try to realize that from where his kinetic energy is coming, because Usain Bolt is running at a speed v, so he must have the energy half mv square. So the big question is from where he derived that energy. What do you think? From where he derived the energy? So who gives energy to the Usain Bolt or all the athletes?
So the muscles.
And from where the muscle gets energy?
Food.
Correct. So eventually you can understand that it is the metabolic reaction which takes place in the human body which generates energy, and it is getting stored in the mitochondria from where the cell will derive the energy. So of course there is an energy storage device in the body. So while running you dissipate a lot of energy also because of the air resistance and so on. And because you dissipate the energy, so you consume energy at a certain rate, and therefore the body should be able to produce the energy at the rate at which you want to run. So the moment the body will stop providing you the energy at a rate at which you want to run, you cannot speed up further. And then the cramps happens, the muscle suddenly behaves in a weird fashion. The reason is it's like abrupt stoppage of supply of energy. So body react in variety of ways. It says that, okay, sorry guy, I mean, I cannot help you. This is not the rate of energy production. I can produce energy at the rate you are demanding from me. So the energy is always produced at certain rate. So the reaction, which is stored energy, we have some time constant in supply also. So you eat food which stores energy, which creates energy. But from there, that energy to transmit to the requirement to various part of the muscles, I mean body muscle, there is a delay in the process because there is always the rate of transfer, and that's called the word power. So the power has to do with the rate at which the supply is happening. That's the meaning of power. Power is all about rate. So you have money, and at what rate you want to spend it. So money is constant quantity. The rate will decide how quickly you can consume it or how slowly you can consume it. Like the delay can be understood by the meaning of power. So a high power means high consumption rate. Low power means low consumption rate. That's the only meaning of power. Power is only telling you that when your reservoir or the storage will get emptied if you keep on consuming at this rate. So it gives you the limitation. So that's why every like vehicle, like car or bikes or trucks, so they comes with a power. So it means it is predefined that at what rate the fuel can be burnt and energy can be extracted, because you cannot burn all the tank at one go and it will become like a rocket. Now rocket does the same thing. It burns 80% fuel in no time. Now because of the mechanism of burning such a huge amount of fuel, the power generated in rockets are tremendous beyond imagination. And with that power, the rockets are capable of leaving the Earth's gravity in no time. So if you can create the same thrust, or if you can burn the fuel exactly at the same rate as we do in case of rocket, then we need a jet engine attached to the car. I mean, that is, you can imagine the size of the car. You need to create a rocket-like behavior. So power is crucial in designing stuff. So we know that whatever system we design, some mechanical system like engine or whatever, the fuel can be burnt at a certain rate. So there is some rate which is predetermined. So let's say when you press the accelerator of the car or when you turn the accelerator of the bike, what exactly you do is there is a wire attached from the accelerator to the fuel tank. By pressing it, you open the valve and you allow more fuel to enter. So even if you press completely, the valve will open up to some value and will let the petrol to enter from tank to the engine, the ignition chamber. So that will decide the rate of fuel entry, and the fuel will burn further to produce the power. So now you can understand that the power is only about rate. So energy is the fuel tank. You can imagine this way. You burn the fuel, you generate the energy. And the rate at which you generate is called power. And if you can generate faster power, it will consume fuel very quickly actually. So a vehicle with very high power will can consume energy very quickly. But for the speed or F1 cars, the cost is not an issue. Of course, it's issue at a level to manufacture, but their speed is, I mean, their purpose is the speed. So they want to burn the fuel as quickly as possible. So when F1 race car, I mean, when F1 car moves on track, they have a pit stop where they refill everything very quickly. So they don't have the, a huge tank capacity, because that will increase the weight and will also decrease the, you can say, mileage and all. So they have a very lightweight body. They have a small fuel tank also. So they need to refuel after every lap. That's very much required. F1 car cannot, you can take on a road, and if you take on a Mumbai traffic, then it will consume all energy while crossing a flyover, because the traffic. So their energy rate consumption is very high. That's the idea. So the passenger cars which they design, they have a huge fuel tank capacity, and the burning rate is also not very high. So you cannot burn all fuel at once and generate the infinite power. So work is the process name, energy is the fundamental thing. Power is all about the rate, like the rate at which you consume that storage, stored energy. So these three things are interrelated in a way. So the fundamental thing is like you have money, so you have energy. Now work is the process by which you can exchange it. You can share with your friends if you have some extra. And the power is at what rate you want to do this. So that sums up the concept of work energy power. Energy, the money you have, the stored amount of thing. Work, to the method to extract money. So you may give also, you can store more also. So you can take it from somebody else and then store it. So you can, by doing the work, you can increase the energy. By doing the work, you can decrease the energy. Now, work is a name for the energy exchange, but what is work done? So that's the difference. This is basically totally ignored by everyone. So work and work done are different things. So work is a concept. It is a process in which energy is exchanged between two bodies, and in this case, the presence of force is essential. It is one of the methods, because I said there are many methods in which you can exchange energy. So it is one of the methods by which energy exchange can take place between two bodies, and the agent must be force. So if we talk about work, the defining agent which is doing this process is force action. So now we define something called work done by force. So work done is defined for every individual force acting on a system. So if your system is experiencing more than one force, let's say if you do a normal FPT, you know that the normal is acting, gravity is acting. Let's say you're applying a force, this is called agent, and then some friction is also acting Fk. So you can see right now that in the FBD there are variety of force. So we have F, N, Mg, Fk. So work done we define by one force at a time. So when you come across variety of forces, don't worry about every force at once. You take one force at once and then think about the definition, apply the definition, get the answer, then go to the next force. And because work is a method of energy exchange, and energy is a scalar quantity. It's a scalar, which means whoever will give you energy will add up, and whoever will take away energy from you will decrease or subtract. So here direction does not matter, like how you apply the force. What matters is if you are doing work, you are giving energy to me, and if you are doing negative work, you are taking energy away from me. So that's only two possibilities. So energy being a scalar quantity, you can add and subtract just like normal mathematics. So whatever basic mathematics you know of addition and subtraction, you can apply there. So whenever we have the scalar quantities, we can do a regular algebra. When we have vector quantities, then we use the vector algebra or the method of vector addition and subtraction. So work done by a force. Now that's important. Every force does some work, or maybe may do some work. The question is, what is its work done? How we should define it? Now definition is very crucial. And normally the definition is ignored while solving the question. That's why you get the wrong answer. So try to pay attention to the definition which I'm going to give. So it is defined as product of force and displacement of, now this is very question, point of application of force in the direction of force. Now there are so many things written at once. So the work done by a force is defined as the product of force and displacement. But displacement of what? So displacement of point of application of force. This is very crucial. Now this is generally misunderstood. So we never think of displacement meaning actually in case of work done by force. We always think displacement as the body's motion, which is not true. The displacement is always attached to the point where the force is actually applied. That point is moving or not will decide the work or not. So for example, if I ask you guys, when you walk, so which force will help you in walking?
Friction.
Friction. Which friction is static or kinetic?
Static.
So is it any work done by the friction? Is the friction doing some work on you, positive or negative?
It's a positive because displacement is a one direction of friction.
So let's say when you climb stairs, what helps you in climbing? So which force will help you in climbing the stair?
Normal.
Correct. Normal. So normal helps you in climbing the stairs, let's say, and you're going up the stairs. So is it doing positive work or negative work? Is normal doing positive work or negative work? Pardon? If you are climbing the stair, and as you said, normal is helping you in climbing the stair. So my obvious question is,
Normal's component will do positive work.
normal component. So normal will have component in which direction?
Positive.
So when a car is moving on a road, friction is doing positive work or negative work?
Positive.
And a positive work means what? That friction is giving energy to the car or taking energy away from the car.
Giving energy.
So if friction can give energy to the car, then car should have moved without the fuel. So is it possible that you can move a car only with friction? Let's remove the tank and all.
No.
Is it possible to move like you can move on a surface without actually putting your foot forward? And when you walk, then you get tired or you become energetic. So while you walk or run, do you become energetic or become tired?
So you become tired.
So you get tired while walking, but you are saying that friction is giving you energy. So how it is possible to get energy and become tired? Because you're saying you're getting energy. So there must be some conceptual mistake in what you're saying. So what you need to understand is that the work by all these forces actually not being done. They are doing zero work actually. A force acting will never be sufficient to say that it will work. So work done by a force, like we say work is done by a force only when certain criteria are met. And the criteria are like the force is there, not, yeah, if it is there, then we ask, is there in displacement of point of application where you apply the force. So when you walk, where the friction acts between the foot and the surface, isn't it?
Yes.
Now tell me, is that friction moving the foot, or you lift the foot and put it forward? What you do? Is your foot put forward by the friction?
Yes.
What is that friction taking your foot forward?
Sir, it just
Sure.
prevents us from slipping.
Correct.
So no way.
So your foot is there only. Your foot is not moving. If you remember, the contact is always maintained between your foot and the surface, and then you create a new contact with the new, maybe from the right foot, and then you lift the left foot. So in no point of time, the force has moved your foot. So friction is acting is one thing, but is it creating any displacement? Is the point of
No,
application
sir.
getting displaced by friction force? The answer is no. But imagine that you are at the airport and the luggage comes to the the moving belt, the conveyor belt system. So on the conveyor belt, the luggages are kept, all luggages are kept on the belt, and the luggages are moved by which force? So which force will move the luggages? Tell me. Have you seen the conveyor belt at airports?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So if you have seen the conveyor belt, okay, then the luggages are moving over the belt, isn't it? So which force is moving the luggages?
Friction force.
And now is it displacing the luggage? Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, it is now actually the friction is moving from one point to another point because luggage cannot walk. That's the problem. Until we create a robotic luggage, the luggage will start walking when it will arrive at the airport. So in future it will happen. Like you need not to carry your luggage. You just have to carry the luggage attached to the robots. Yeah, and you will instruct and the luggage will move. So that will be the future, maybe 20 years next. So the idea is the same friction, which was not working in our case when we walk, the same friction will work in the other case at airport. Because there the friction is acting at the bottom of the luggage, and the point where it is acting is also moving forward. So the point of application having some displacement. So when we talk about the work done by a force, we look for the point of application. We do not look at the body as a whole. It means we really do not care about whether the body has moved or not. What we care about is the point at which I am applying the force. Is that point moved by me, yes or no? Unless the answer is not yes, there is no work. So imagine the fan in your room is switched off. You touch the wing at the end and you just move it your hand. You just give a gentle push. So when you give a gentle push, what you see? The wings are in set into rotation, isn't it?
Yes.
Is the fan moving? Like the center of the fan is moving somewhere?
No.
No. So fan as a whole is not moving, but the wings are in rotation. So can we say that we have done some work?
Yes.
Yes, we can say because we touch the wing. So that is a point of application of force. And that point has moved. So body has moved or not doesn't matter. What matters is the point of application. And whenever there is a motion of point of application, we say work has been done. So for work is being done by a force or not, that should be decided by the fact that that force is displacing the point of application or not. The body should not be looked for. Like you should not see the entire body to understand the work done. No, only force and the point of application. So you can take a simple example. Imagine the block here is dragged by the force forward. So if we talk about the gravity, is gravity capable of taking the block downward?
No.
No. Is normal capable of taking the block upward?
No.
It means are they doing any work?
No.
The answer is no. Unless there is no component of displacement in the direction of the force applied, we never say there is a work. So just because they are acting will never guarantee that they will work. So you may have a large number of friends, but at the time of need, not all will help. They are friends, they support you. But at one point of time, only few can help you financially, other cannot. But they still support. So same goes with the work. All force which act on the body will not actually do the work. So some force only support. In fact, some opposes as well. Now look at this, same diagram and try to understand the meaning of work. Now the capital F is some agent applying the force, and it is applying force towards right. Can you see the point of application?
Yes.
This is the point of application. And now that point has moved to it from there to here. So can we say that work is being done by the F? Can we say yes or no?
Yes.
Is it a positive work or negative work?
Positive word.
Correct. Because it is supporting the motion, like the direction in which you are applying the force is the displacement motion. So the F is doing the positive work. What FK is doing? Is it trying to create the displacement, or it is trying to oppose the displacement?
So friction.
Yeah,
It's opposing the displacement. So negative work.
correct. So now the positive work is like the guy is giving energy to the block, and negative means friction is taking energy away from the block. So one is giving the energy, other is taking the energy. So what is the net energy given to the block? What we can say? The net energy given to the block is the energy by the F minus energy by the F. That's it. So the definition of work done by a force is very crucial. And the two lines will summarize the entire chapter. Now let's go back to the example which I asked you in the beginning. When you climb a stair, is normal doing any work?
No, sir.
No. And that is for the obvious reason, because the normal will act to support you, but it will never lift your foot upward. So normal is acting there and there only. So when you lift your foot and put on the next stair, there is no normal acting in between. So normal only acts when you touch it. So the moment you remove it, there is no normal. So there is no work. So let's take the third situation. Like you're in the elevator, and the elevator goes from the ground floor to the 10th floor. So in this process, is normal doing work on you? Yes or no?
So can you repeat the question? I didn't hear.
Question is simple. So a person is standing inside a lift. Imagine this is the lift. And imagine that a person is standing here. And lift is going upward. Now the normal reaction acting on the man, will it work? Yes or no? So the normal on the man will work, yes or no?
Yes.
So the normal reaction is acting at the foot. And as the lift will go up, the normal will push it upward because normal is always active. So here the normal is doing work, yes or no?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
So normal is doing work here, but when you climb the stair, when a man will climb the stair, so you will just put your foot forward and you will just lift your rear foot and then you will put it on the hill. So in the climbing process, the point of application never moves. Only you create a new contact. That is the idea in case of climbing the stair. But in the elevator case, the point of application moves upward. So that's why when you use a lift, you don't feel tired because you are being lifted by the normal reaction. And that's why you don't feel any tiredness. But imagine if you climb the stair to the same floor, 10th floor.
So if
What
we
will
are
happen?
going down, then normal will oppose to this movement.
If you're going down, then again normal will do 0 1. It really doesn't matter whether you're going down or up in this case. Like you're talking about stairs or elevator.
So elevator.
So while going down, the normal will do the negative work. It will take energy from you. So you may be arguing that if it is taking energy from me, then I must be tired because my energy will be lost.
Yes.
The answer is no. Why? Because the other force is also acting called gravity. So while you go down, the gravity will give you energy because gravity will do the positive work because gravity acts downward and you're going downward. So the point of application of gravity will take you downward, which means your energy will increase. So whatever normal will take away, gravity
Okay.
will impart. So one is taking, but other is supplying. So in a way, you're not losing as a whole. So there is no net loss. Okay. And that is why you will not get tired. In while going up, although gravity is taking, but it is actually supplied by the normal. So again, you're not losing your energy. So whatever the gravity is taking from you is actually supplied by the normal. And that is why you are comfortable. So there are variety of ways of thinking. Okay. So if you think of only one force, then you may not get the right answer. But if you think of all forces acting together, then you can understand the or think about the right answer, that what is exactly happening. Understood? So the idea is this: we need to account for every force, and we need to also account for whether they are doing positive work or negative work. And then we need to add all this energy. I mean, if it is positive, we add; if it is negative, we subtract. So the same force can work in one situation and it may not work in another situation. The same force can do positive work or negative work or no work. So all three situations are equally possible by a force. It can do positive work, it may give you energy. Negative work will take energy away from you, and zero work will do nothing at all. So a force acting will never guarantee that it will do work. And that's a very famous, I mean, maybe a cooked up story that James Prescott Joule came to India. You know, James Prescott Joule, the name of the Jew, which is a
Yes,
Jew.
sir.
So now the porter was carrying his luggage. So now porter will carry the luggage. You can understand the normal direction acting on the luggage is upward and the porter is moving horizontal. So what is the work done by the porter on the luggage?
0.
So he said that he will not pay any money because the guy has not done any work. Because as per the definition of work, there is no work. So now work in a sense that we use in day-to-day life and the work in physics are quite different. So one should not confuse with the work here and the work there. So in common life, even sitting is a work. Like I'm sitting and I'm teaching you guys, so I'm doing some work as per my, okay, the person who knows. But I'm not doing any work as per the definition of physics. So work done in physics is different from the work done in the common, the notion that we carry about it. To be, careful about it. When we define work, we need to understand the same. It's not the same thing as we understand. It's always different. It's quite different. Understood? Always question this. So work is defined by a product of force and displacement of point of application. Now this point is somewhat crucial. We need to understand this point of application. So the other idea is do not look for the body's motion. Don't see the body as a whole, how it is moving. Only look for the point where the force is acting, the contact force. If it is contact force, look at the point of contact and check whether that point is being moved by the force or not. So moving means if a force is moving, it means the force is sticking to the point all the time. So let's say the point is moving, but the force is not sticking to it. So for example, when you walk, you touch the ground, then there is a normal. You lift the foot, there is no normal. You touch the ground, there is a friction. You lift the foot, there is no friction. So the walking is the process of make and break. So you make contact, you break contact. So making and breaking the contact is not motion. I mean, not motion in terms of moving something. Okay. So that is a motion for the body as a whole, but not as a point of application. So now we are good to go and we are in a good shape to define the mathematical definition of work. So how we define it? So there are a variety of ways in which you can define. So we'll start with some example. So let's say we have a block. And you can in fact analyze any situation in your day-to-day life and you can actually explain how the energy flow is taking place. Okay. So let's say there's a block and this is the point. This is the point of application. I hope you can see the point of application. So now I'm just highlighting the point of application. The circle part is the point of application of the force F. Now, how the block is moving does not matter. I mean, of course, Right now we are talking about the particle dynamics. So everything we assume as a point, and the point. Oh no, what is that? I think net has gone. So just wait a minute. Just okay. My voice is audible to you guys.
Yes, sir.
So just like the case of the elevator has a variety of things. How energy flow take place in nature. So every elevator is attached to a cable, right? I hope you know this fact.
Yes.
So every elevator is attached to cable, and the cable will have a pulley system. Basically, there is a pulley system. You can imagine there's a big pulley attached somewhere at the top of the building, which actually carries the cable. And the other side of the cable is attached to the bottom. You can think of this. And of course, the bottom is also attached to some motor. And the motor is eventually plugged to a circuit board. So we want to understand the energy flow, like how energy flow exactly takes place, like what goes in this energy flow. So we'll take the same example. The man is standing. So imagine a man is standing in this elevator. So now if you draw the normal direction on the man, it will be upward, but at the same time, the normal is also acting on the elevator downward, right? If I draw the ABD of the elevator, it will be downward. So what does it mean? Like normal is giving energy to the man. Now what I told you in the beginning that energy is the fundamental, the work is a process of exchange. So it means when someone gives energy, someone means the force, some force gives energy. It must be deriving that energy from somewhere. So there must be some source of energy. Because the force are not producer of energy, they are the agent of energy exchange. So they are agent. So they take energy from somewhere and give it to you. They don't create energy because energy cannot be created and destroyed. So now the normal is giving you energy because the same normal is acting on the elevator downward. So if you look carefully, what is the work done by the normal on the elevator? Is it positive or negative? So for elevator, the normal is doing positive work or negative work?
So elevator is moving where upward or downward?
Pardon?
So elevator is moving upward or down?
Yeah, it's moving upwards. So if the elevator is going
So
up, the normal is doing
negative.
positive, negative work. So negative means the normal is extracting energy from elevator, and the same energy it is giving back to the man. So now you can understand that normal is able to extract from elevator. Elevator will, so the normal will give energy from elevator to the man. That's the flow of energy. You can think of this. But if elevator is giving energy to the normal, so from where the elevator is getting the energy? Turns out to be it is a tension. Because the tension is doing positive work on elevator as a whole, and that's why it supplies the energy to the elevator. So then the question is, from where the tension will derive the energy? The answer is motor. And then the question is, from where the motor will derive the energy? The answer is electricity. Then the question is, from where the electricity will energy, this energy will come? Power station. Then the question is, from where the power station will get the energy? Burning coal. And then from where the burning coal will give the energy? Chemical reaction called oxidation. And now we believe that the God has made the coal. I mean, that is somewhere I have to stop. Now you can imagine that a simple act of moving in an elevator is associated with the chemical reaction taking place called oxidation or burning of fuel. From burning coal to driving this elevator, that's the entire relation of energy. Energy flow is very important, and that's why you pay the energy bill. You don't pay the power bill, you pay the energy bill. Because on a monthly basis, various appliances installed at your home will consume energy, and that energy is actually supplied by somebody else. So maybe the supplier is the Adani or Tata or some other distribution and distributors. So eventually, the energy is somewhere consumed, somewhere it is produced, and that energy is transferred through all various mechanisms. That's how the energy flow takes place. So when a force is giving energy, it must be taken from somewhere. That is obvious. So imagine there is a moving train, and now someone is dancing over the train. Chal chaiya chaiya, let's say. So imagine that this guy is moving. So train is moving is fine. So train will have the fuel mechanism to burn and create the rotation in the wheels, and the friction between the wheel and the track will support the motion, and then it will move. So we'll learn in the chapter of rotation, the train do not move, the wheel fall actually. Now the falling is called rotation. I mean, that's interesting. You don't walk, you just fall. So the man, I mean, the man means the mankind. So the man has learned to balance their weight on the 2 foot. So you fall on the first one and then you balance on the next one. And that is called walking. So a small kid, maybe 8 months or 9 months, why they fail to move? Because they are learning how to balance their body weight. So they stand up, they try to move few steps and they fall. Because their brain is into the process of creating the balance. So the concept of balance is actually developing the muscle memory through practice. So now you understand how to balance your body weight. So if you try to walk while the surface is vibrating, it's impossible. If I create a surface and if I just vibrate, I'm not saying I will move surface very much, but even if I vibrate the surface by a few millimeters, it will be very difficult for you to walk. So that exactly happens during the earthquake. If you try to walk during the earthquake, you won't be able to walk. In fact, that's because the brain is not ready to balance the body weight in such a changing situation. So now let's try to understand the energy flow, like from where the energy comes and where it goes. So here the friction will not give energy. This is static friction. So static friction will hold the wheel and the wheel will fall forward, and that's how you will see the train is moving. So what next? The next is the friction acting on the man standing on the train is like this. So the friction force will act forward, whereas the let's call it FHS. Whereas the same friction will act backward on the train. And now because man is standing there, so friction will do the positive one because it is always in contact and moving. So what is happening is the friction is giving energy to the man, but it is at the same time extracting energy from the train. And the train is generating that energy by burning the fuel. That's not an issue. So energy is coming from somewhere. So you always see there is a source. Like without source, energy cannot be exchanged. You need to have some source of energy. Then only we can talk about the work. So whenever we talk about the work, we always talk about the source first. Like who is giving? The giver must be there before you take from someone. Okay. So let's take another example of energy process, energy flow process. This is interesting. Don't worry about this chapter. Once you understand the energy flow, this chapter is piece of cake. You can play with question. You will do question mentally without any formula. And I will teach you how to do the question without formula. Just by common sense. As a student, I solved this chapter without any effort, without learning this chapter. Because the only thing I understood one thing is the energy flow. So if you also learn the energy flow, it's easy for you. So try to understand who gives energy, who takes up energy, how energy comes, from where it comes, and so on. So imagine we have two blocks attached to the string, one string, passing over the pulley, and we call it M. So if you draw the FBD, the gravity will act downward. And the same tension will act upward. So let's start doing the process of motion. So we all know that if let's take M2 is bigger than M1 for the sake of illustration. Then M2 will go down or up?
Down.
How M2 will go? Let's say. So let's say M2 goes down with some value Y. So what about the M1? Will it go up or down?
Up with value 1.
Okay, all right. So now this is the part which we have done. I mean, it's not something new to us. Now the next step is very simple. If M2 is going down, M1 is going up. So let's talk about each force and see what they are doing. So let me talk about the M2G, the gravitational pull on the M2. Is it going to do positive work or negative work?
Positive.
So it means it is going to impart energy to the block M2.
Yes,
Isn't
sir.
it? Now, if M2 is going down, which force is bigger, T or M2G?
M2G.
M2G.
Now, why I ask this question? Because if M2 will go down, the gravity will give energy by doing the work M2G into Y. We can also do that thing. But try to understand what tension is doing on M2. Is it doing positive work or negative work or zero work?
Negative.
Negative. So it means it is taking energy away from M2. But is it taking all energy?
No.
Because it is smaller than gravity, so it is taking energy. So it is taking a part of the energy. So let's say gravity is able to give you maybe 1000 joule, but it is possible that tension is only taking maybe 200 joule. Okay. So now now the energy flow we have understood that gravity is giving energy to the M2 and tension is taking energy away from it. So tension is the energy sucker and gravity is the energy giver. Okay, the two things are there. Okay. So now the first part we have analyzed, like gravity is giving energy, tension is taking energy from where M2. And like so M2 receives energy by gravity and tension will extract some of part of it from the gravity, I mean from the block. That's interesting. So block becomes the source for tension, but the block source will be gravity. So the block will receive energy from the gravity and that part will be taken away by the tension and go to the next side, the left side. Look at this. What is happening here? Is the tension doing positive work or negative work?
Tension is
Positive
doing
work.
positive work.
That's very interesting. So tension is an agent which takes energy from M2 and just supplies back to M1. So tension is not keeping it. Anyway, tension cannot keep it. So these are agents. Agent cannot keep energy. So agents can only give or take energy. They cannot store energy. That's very interesting. And that's some situation when energy can also be stored, like spring. So not all force or all type of force can store the energy, but when it comes to the spring force, because of the shape of the spring, the geometry of the spring, it is capable of storing the energy by virtue of deformation. And later on, that process or that method, we are going to call it potential. But remember one thing in this chapter, that there is nothing called potential in nature. So do not try to carry this notion of potential energy at all. I mean, this is the biggest hurdle in learning work energy power chapter. So there's nothing like potential energy. Potential energy is, of course, I will teach you, but I will tell you how to perceive it. So whatever idea you have about potential, please try to discard it as of now. So now going to the left side, now we have realized the same tension is doing positive work on M1. So tension is extracting energy from the M2 and just giving back to M1. So it's doing nothing. So such agents So if you remember that in the laws of motion chapter, I called these forces as constant force: tension, static, friction, and normal. These are three constraint force in physics, if you remember.
Yes, sir.
So that also defines the role of constant force. If the force is the internal constant force, there is a predefined role. And what is that role? To distribute energy between the system, between the parts of system. So the role of constant force is just distribution. They never contribute something. They just distribute something. So what they do is they take energy from one and they give to the other. They help in exchange of energy between the different parts of system. So the idea is they never try to, you can say, keep energy or create energy. They just take from one and give to the other. That's the only role they can play. So that will also put in a theory. Don't worry about it. So we'll put in theory that the internal constant force can only help in redistribute the energy which is taken by the system. So if system is receiving some energy from some other source, then the role of the internal force is to kind of distribute the energy among all the stakeholders. Like let's you take keep this, you keep this. So it is like that. And now comes to the M1G, the gravity force on M1 on M1 block. So what M1G is doing? Is it doing positive work or negative work?
Negative work.
Negative.
So now the tension is giving energy, and a part of that energy is again taken away by the gravity. So on one side, gravity is giving energy, on the other side is taking away the energy. But because M2G is bigger than M1G, so the net energy given is always more than net energy taken. And that is why the net energy is available in the system. So what we call the net energy available to the system. So the energy which is always available to the system, we call it kinetic energy. So the M2 and M1 will have some kinetic energy at that instant. So after moving through y distance, both block will have some speed. And now you know why they have speed. Because they have received some energy in the process of going up and down. So energy is the another aspect, or you can say a different perspective of looking at the same phenomenon. So we have been looking at a phenomena through the lens of force, and now the same phenomenon look through the lens of energy. And it is more universal and up to force observation. Like the way we look at things in terms of force is not as appealing. And because of the universality of the energy, we can apply in variety of situations. So every question which you can solve with the help of laws of motion can definitely be solved with the help of energy. The vice versa is not possible. Every question which you can solve with energy may not be solved by the laws of motion. And that's interesting. And that's why we are learning this chapter, because whenever the laws of motion will fail in one way or the other way, we need to resort to the energy. In fact, a variety of questions of laws of motion we can solve very fast and quick. And I will show you like those questions where you had put a lot of effort by solving, writing the equation of kinematics and all. And here you can solve in one line. Like energy is so fast, and it is convenient. So energy method is like again it will give you a new wings to fly. So once you master this chapter, the remaining chapter which you have learned, probably you can make it easier. Like the effort can be reduced drastically. Okay. And that is the sole idea behind learning this chapter. So this will give you new perspective of thinking. And by developing this new perspective, you will be at ease in solving the same question which you have been solving rigorously. But eventually we have to strike a balance between the two methods, like the laws of motion and the energy method. Because to optimize the speed, we need to know both. Okay. So sometimes the laws of motion is more convenient to apply and get the answer. Sometimes energy is more convenient. So we look for the convenience, like which one is faster, and we have to optimize the speed in solving that. Now the strategy to solve one kind of question or the other kind of question depends on the question which you face. So there is no predefined strategy. That's it. So you need to figure it out that which strategy will be better in this case, laws of motion or the energy method. So that we'll practice, of course, and we'll also learn how it goes. So I think I have given you the enough motivation about energy and the work. And now you also know that the work will have two different signs also. One is positive and other is negative, which means a positive sign is referring to the direction of energy flow. So when energy flows from the agent to the object, agent, the source to the object. When energy goes from agent to the object, we say positive work. And when energy goes from object to agent, so the other way of saying is when an agent is doing positive work, it will supply energy to the system on which agent is acting. And a negative work will refer to the fact that the agent is withdrawing energy from the system. That's the only idea behind the positive and negative sign. That's the role of sign. But eventually, what we need to understand is work is a energy part. What is the transaction of energy? And to take care of the direction of transaction, we have design plus and minus, because scalars are always positive, but work can be positive and negative. The reason is why we define work as positive and negative, to denote the direction of transaction. So it does not mean that work is negative. Energy cannot be negative, isn't it? So energy is energy. It's always a positive quantity. It's a scalar quantity. Work is the transaction of energy, and so a plus and minus is meaningful in situation we deal with.
Sir, in this case, the net one is N2GY minus N1GY.
Correct. Exactly. So the network, then if you want to write, I mean, in fact, I can show you something interesting. I mean, just because I haven't taught formally. So this is the network. This is the net energy supplied, and this must be equal to the net kinetic energy. And energy we can only add. So half m1 v1 square, half m2 v2 square. And if you differentiate this equation, you'll get the answer of acceleration. If you differentiate with time, the dy dt is the velocity, and dv dt is acceleration. You can see acceleration is this is the exact relation of acceleration which we derive in laws of motion. And we can feel it. It's not difficult to understand why this is the answer. So that's why I said like question which you can solve by the laws of motion can also be solved by the energy method. So now we need to design a strategy that which case is easier. Like, and both methods are equally useful in different situations. Okay. So energy flow is important. If you understand the energy flow, you can actually do it organically without thinking of a formula. Basically, what I have written is called work energy flow. Now the name is fancy, work energy flow. So we can call it by a fancy name like this, or we can just solve the question by common sense. It's the same. So in this chapter, you can solve by common sense more often than by thinking of the theorem and all. Just imagine who is giving, who is taking. The giver is positive, taker is negative. Subtract it, net is equals to half in this way. So now the kinetic energy is energy which is like show off. So you always, manifest your energy as kinetic. So if I give you energy and if you manifest, it's kinetic. And if I give you energy and you fail to manifest, and you also do not dissipate, so neither you have dissipated nor you are manifesting it, then we end up calling it potential. It's like energy is there, but I can't see it. So there is a potential to be retrieved later on. So as and when required, I can take it back. So the ability to take it back, we call it potential. So potential is a sense that energy is not lost totally. You just need to wait; it will be back to you once you reverse the situation. So the only energy is kinetic energy. Potential is a way of saying the energy which we give and we fail to see. So let's say you are wearing a jacket, and hypothetically, I say that the jacket is having infinite pockets. So I give you a 10 rupee note and which you put in some random pocket. So now it may take infinite time to get that note in on an average basis if you use the theory of probability, because every pocket will have roughly zero probability of finding that 10 rupee note. But I know one thing for sure, that the money is with you only. In some pocket it is there, we don't know which pocket, but we know for sure it's there. And this idea that it is there, we call it potential. So potential is this idea, the idea of knowing the fact that you have energy and not being able to see it will force us to believe that it is there, and because this is not lost, so there is a potential to be retrieved as and when required. So we end up calling it, what we call potential. So that's why I said that potential is nothing. There's nothing like potential energy as such. It is the same thing as work actually, and that we'll learn, of course, a separate topic of potential. So the crucial idea, crucial takeaway from this discussion is, why I'm discussing a lot, not giving any formula, because once you realize the process, the name, you will be free from the burden of remembering the definitions and work in the theorem and so on. You can just apply it by common sense, and this common sense will let you solve roughly 99% questions. 1% requires some extra knowledge, and that anyway I will impart. So you can solve entire theorem with just this much information if you know the various formula, what is energy, what is the work done in various cases and all. So our endeavor in this chapter is to understand the work definition, and we'll also look at the variety of forces and the way they behave. So the behavior should be analyzed as first, so that we should not be confused later on. So let's move forward and start with the formal definition of the chapter now. So you can also do as a small project, like in your surrounding, can you define the energy flow process? If you see some event, then try to analyze the energy flow process. And you will find that everything in nature, in this universe, is designed for energy flow only. So for example, you can think of refrigerator. So in refrigerator, the things are kept at low temperature inside, isn't it? And the outside is low or high temperature. Which temperature? So let's say if your
High.
refrigerator is in the kitchen, then temperature inside the refrigerator is high or outside the refrigerator is high?
Outside.
Outside. So have you ever realized that how things which we keep inside becomes colder? So there is simple mechanism. You extract energy from the object you keep inside. So the rule is you need to throw the energy from inside to outside to keep it colder. So you will later on come to know or realize in the chapter of kinetic theory of gases that the energy flow decides the temperature. So any system which gives away its energy will become colder. The temperature is the measurement of energy actually. In a way, in thermodynamics, we prefer temperature as a variable instead of talking about energy. So it's nothing new. Like temperature and energy are relevant. I mean, they are actually proportional. In fact, we will come to know it. They are actually proportional. So temperature is a some sort of what we call it is statistical variable that we have designed. Like we have designed for our convenience. There is nothing like temperature in nature. And you will realize later on that even the temperature is nothing but the kinetic energy of molecules. So saying the high temperature refers to the high kinetic energy of the medium particles. And because we have just infinite number of gases molecules, even in the smallest volume we can think of, so the energy is not a relevant thing to deal with. So we define something called temperature, which takes care of the average property of the all molecules. So temperature is called the statistical variable, which defines the overall behavior of the entire gaseous molecule present in this, I mean, in a certain container or maybe in atmosphere, whatever. So you can think of atmosphere as also as a big container which holds back these molecules, and so it will have its own temperature. The temperature is the average behavior. It's not individual behavior. What we call is called macroscopic behavior in context of like statistical physics or when you study the kinetic theory of gases. Now that's the very biggest revelation that the world is only having kinetic energy, and everything else is like we have mapped to it. Like we map things like temperature to this, and then you will also realize that pressure is again nothing in nature. There's nothing like pressure. So what is fundamentally the force? Now just because if you try to calculate the force over an square inch or square centimeter or square meter, or in a way we call per into area, then the term which we derive we call it pressure. So there's nothing like pressure exactly. I mean, pressure is nothing but another way of saying the ability of a gaseous molecule to hit the surface and exert the force by transferring the momentum. So the fundamentally it is the momentum transfer. And when you calculate the rate of momentum transfer over some unit area, then the average behavior we call it pressure. So again, later on come to know that even the pressure we can also relate with energy because it is related to the temperature, eventually kinetic energy, momentum. So every relation will come to life if you go back in the origin of the formula. You will come to know that okay, it is actually derived from the basic laws of motion. Now you may be wondering that what is electrical energy, and then now the to your surprise, even it is kinetic energy of electrons which moves inside the conductor. So there is no other form of energy. The only energy is kinetic energy, but the way to look at it is different. So in various chapters, we name it differently. We make it fancy name and different representations. and they appear as a very new formula to you. The core of everything is same. So even the way of calling electrical energy is simply the kinetic energy of electrons. That's the only thing we call electrical energy. There's nothing like electrical energy as such. Yeah, you can say there is something called electromagnetic energy, like photon energy. That's slightly different. So in essence, you will see that either we have the electromagnetic energy or we have the kinetic energy. And that will encompass the 99.99% of the entire physics which you deal with on a day-to-day basis. So the energy is the the most fundamental concept. You need to understand energy, and once you understand energy, you can understand the other chapters. So these chapters which will come very soon. So the way it is taught and the way you should perceive, because I have taught you the physics. So you need to carry the perspective of physics and then try to understand. You will find that things are pretty easy. So many students feel difficulty in thermodynamics. The reason is they don't try to understand the meaning of temperature or meaning of energy. All are related. So you will come to know in the chapter of ATG that how the energy is, creating temperature like concept, the pressure like concept. A volume is a geometrical property. So we know volume is the container volume. So that's geometry. So that's nothing to do with the physics. So in the PV equals to nRT, the V is something which is depending on the rest. And what is the meaning of PV equals to nRT means? So if molecules are at that pressure called P and temperature is T, then N moles will occupy the volume V. It is like their natural spread. That's the meaning of the PV equals to nRT. Basically, we'll come to know that PV upon RT, so PV upon NT is the fundamental constant. It never changes. And the ratio we get is called R, universal gas constant. And that's how we have the ideal gas equation. Anyway, so deep down, everything is energy. So that's the core learning from today's discussion, that everything we think of has to do something with energy. Your refrigerator is the example of second law of thermodynamics. Because throwing energy from inside to outside is not the law of nature. In nature, what happens? The energy flows from high temperature to low temperature or low to high. What happens in nature?
High to low.
So low to high is against the nature, isn't it? So low to high energy flow is not favored by nature. Nature will never favor this process. So something which is not favored, we have to do it artificially. We have to do it manually. And that is why we design the refrigerator which does it manually by using a coolant compressor. So coolant flows through the pipe which is attached to the wall of the refrigerator. And when coolant will flow through those pipes, it will suck the energy and will become gas. And whether that coolant will go back to the compressor, it will be reconverted into liquid. That's why it's called compression. It will compress the gas into liquid. That's the meaning of compression. So at the behind of a refrigerator, if you look at the bottom, there's a big cylindrical object like cylinder kind of object. And that object is basically your compression. So the compressor role is to convert the coolant back to the liquid. So if the compressor will have a leakage, then it will lose the coolant, and then eventually the cooling effect of the refrigerator will die down. So after a long time, because of the erosion of the cylinder, that leakage starts and the refrigerator will become, not good for purpose. So now these entire things are designed. Anything in nature which is not as per nature, we need to do some external work. So you can think in this way that every process which is not natural, we need to do some work to carry it out. We need to do some external work. So here the electricity is doing the same thing. So we are consuming the electrical energy to carry out this reverse process of throwing energy from low temperature to high temperature. So what will happen if you open the door of refrigerator for a long time? The room temperature will go down or go up.
Go down.
And unfortunately, because what I said is that the refrigerator will throw energy from inside to outside, but when you open it, so there is nothing like open, nothing is inside, nothing is outside. It's outside. So all of the electrical energy consumed will throw the energy outside. So the temperature of the room will become larger, it will become more actually. So the refrigerator is not cooling it, rather it is throwing the energy from inside to outside. So that's why you need to close the door so that what you throw outside should not come back. Understood? So imagine you want to sweep a room by switching on all the fans. Will you be able to do so?
No, sir.
No.
Got my point? I hope you got my point. So if you want to sweep a room, okay, and you want to switch on the fan, so whatever you sweep will come back. The idea is you switch off the fan so that if you move it aside, it should not come back. That's the basic idea, isn't it? So idea is simple. I hope this makes some sense to you now. So whether it's a refrigerator, whether it's a AC.
So can you explain the refrigerator when we open the door?
Okay, leave it. I mean, see, this will take a lot of discussion time. That's your separate chapter called second law of thermodynamics. So when chemistry sir will teach you thermodynamics and second law, will tell you in great detail how refrigerator works, how AC works. All are these instrument or appliances are based on the second law of thermodynamics. So basically, we create a reverse second law. Second law is in nature, energy goes from high to low. So from energy flow from low to high, we reverse the process. That's why it is said that when you are using the AC, you must create a closed room. So they will tell you close the door, AC is running. Why they say? Because they're trying to throw the energy outside, and if you open the door, it all will come back. So temperature change cannot take place. And so is with the refrigerator. If you keep the door open for a long time, again the cooling will be hampered. Okay. So those things are there. That's the idea. That's how they work. All appliances which are which we use against the law of nature. See, if everything is as per nature, we need not to spend energy. It will happen. So let's say if you take a bottle of cold drink out of refrigerator, you need to pay money to the nature to make it hot. You just bring it out, it will become hot. It will become called room temperature. Because that flow is natural. That flow is as per nature. We need not to spend money to achieve the same task. Only when we try to go against the nature, we need to spend money, like paying the electricity bill. So that's the idea. That's the idea is very simple. So now what I'm trying to give you a glimpse into the world of energy. Now you can see everything around yourself as energy. So if you know that even in laptop we have the fan attached to the the processor. because the processor is nothing but a big memory space in which the electrons move. You know. So the faster the calculation means more electrons are in motion and they move in quick succession. So you will realize later on, I will teach you in the chapter of capacitor, that a processor is nothing but the RC circuit, the resistance and capacitance circuit. And because of the quick movement of charges, it produces collision between the medium and produces heat. Again, that is the loss of kinetic energy of the electrons. So the loss in kinetic energy of electrons will generate as a heat, and that heat must be thrown out. So we create a convection system which takes the air away from there and brings the fresh air. And that's how the energy is getting transferred in through the convection process. So that's like there are variety of things work. So energy is a very crucial thing. So for that's why the processor will, when it heat up, the problem is when semiconductor devices will heat up, their functioning will be very bad. And that is why all the IT offices are very well maintained centralized cooling system, because this system will work when it is cooled down, and because they are using it 24/7, they need to keep it cooler. So all the semiconductor devices are temperature sensitive. If you take your laptop and if you pour some dry ice on the processor will become really fast. I mean, beyond your imagination. Yeah, this kind of experiment has been done. So some of the like scientists, they pour the liquid nitrogen on the processor, and the calculation speed becomes very high because the electron can move really fast in that case. So of course, I mean, semiconductor world is quite different from the world of conductors, and their behavior is very weird. They are very temperature sensitive people, and that's why when we design any semiconductor device, the temperature sensitiveness is the key issue, and that is why in different geography, the same device will not work in the same fashion. So if you take your laptop and go to Chile, where temperature is 50 degrees plus, without the AC, the laptop will slow down because of the high temperature. And you may go to Antarctica, it will behave better. So anyway, there's a lot of things to be discussed. And okay, before I end up today's lecture, I'll mention this a mathematical definition, because we have done nothing today. But at the same time, we have done everything today. So let's say this is the block. This is the force applied, mass. This is called something, okay, I'll just name. So we call it line of action of force. This point we call it a point of application. And imagine that this block goes from here to here. There is a visible displacement, as you can see. Now the block has been moved from there to here. And this is the displacement. So the point of application has, let's say, moved by S. Now what the definition says that the work done by force F is product of force into displacement of point of application in the direction of force. So we need to take the component of displacement in which direction? In the force direction. You can drop a perpendicular find the component. This is how we find the component. And then you can see that the S here is S cos. So work is product of force and displacement of point of application. Basically, this is a definition for work done by constant force. So we are not changing the magnitude or direction. The only formula we have is work done by constant force. For rest we derive. And the definition is simple: force multiplied by displacement along the direction of force, not anywhere else. So what matter is S cos theta, and then we get the answer. And in vector form we write as F dot S, or we write as F dot delta, because that's the dot product. So to find the work done by constant force, we have seen in the chapter of vector also, like how to do it. So you can also write in a variety of ways: F dot R final minus R initial. So you can take dot product. This is one way of thinking or defining. The other way is, do not resolve the displacement along the force. Do the reverse. Resolve the force along the displacement. So exactly the same situation, but different perspective. These two perspectives will help you in getting the answer. And both are equally easy and nothing difficult. So now we do not alter the displacement. We keep it the way it is. And the way force is acting, we can resolve the force into two components, one along the displacement and other perpendicular. So let's call it F sin theta, not call, this will be F sin theta. And this will be F cos theta. Now while going from here to here, what is the work done by F sin theta?
0.
Now you know the definition. In the direction of F center, there is no movement, so there is no question of work. And therefore, it turns out to be the work done by the F is the sum of work done by its component. And one of the component will do 0 work, and the other will do F cos theta into S. So eventually the same answer. So now this is also two perspective. Like if you can find the component of displacement along the force easily, take the component, multiply by the force, get the answer. But in a situation when you think that finding the component of force is easier along the displacement, then take that component, multiply with the S. So one component and other value should be multiplied, and which component you can take or you should take, that is up to you. So idea is simple. We have two options, and the third option is that the work done by a force is always equals to sum of work done by its component. That's not a big deal. So whenever we want to find the work done by force, it is always equivalent of work done by its component. So if you can find the component, your job is done. Understood?
Yes. Sir, if there was friction, then it would be minus the friction force
Yeah, I mean, see,
multiplied by displacement.
if we have friction, then we have minus FKS, because the angle is 180 degrees, right? FK will be like left and S is right, so angle is 180, cos 180 is -1. So you can just add minus value. That's okay. So if it is opposing, then again find the component and put a minus. That's the only idea we should think about. Okay.
Yes, sir.
So now this is the two ways. I mean, of course, we'll see the application and other things in the next lecture. So now we actually have already went through all problems. In fact, what I have discussed is the kind of question will come across. Now we'll just put it formally and you will see that it's pretty easy job. You can just play with it. Now this idea is sufficient to solve a variety of problems. So we'll see that in next lecture. Thank you guys.
Bye, sir. Thank you.